over the past 4 years, again, 2014 all the way to 2017, huge amount of people in the US are looking for fantasy sports queries, related queries, and in general, sports stats. And we didn't see it anywhere else in the world. So you ask yourself, why so many people looking for fantasy sports? What is it? And that's how we started. We looked at an opportunity, and we saw there's a huge gap between what people are looking for and searching for and what actually someone offered them. Okay, so we decided to dig deep and try to understand what is fantasy sport and what we can bring to this domain.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumitech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. We are in the sports world, not in the field, but in the computer. Meet Or Lifshitz, the CEO and founder of Sidelines. Or was drafted into the Israeli Air Force in 1999 and served as an F-16 fighter pilot for 10 years. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Economics from the University of Haifa and an Executive Master of Public Administration from NYU. Upon completing his EMPA, Or joined Supersonic, IronSource, to head their East Coast office. He later on moved back to Israel to join Google as an industry manager. Believing that upcoming changes in the regulatory space around the US sports industry will create massive business opportunities, Or decided to start a venture in this market and founded Fantasy Advantage in 2017. Or Lifshitz, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to have a great time. I'm going to be talking to you about something that I know very, very little about, but hopefully at the end of this conversation, I'll know a little bit more about, the world of sports betting, but not from the betting perspective, but from the digitalization perspective, from the data analytics perspective, and, talking about scale. When I think of sports betting, I constantly go back to a Seinfeld episode where Kramer goes and bets on a horse race, and he's standing there in the window flapping with his dollar bills, trying to get into this deal. And I'm thinking, okay, how does this actually happen, in 2022? How does this happen online and through data? So, Or, thank you so much for coming here.
Again, it's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully I can answer most of the question. At least try to.
Well, we'll just have to get started and see. And Or, tell me just a little bit about yourself for context, and how did you even get into this world?
Great. So my name is Or, as you said. I'm 40 years old, live in Tel Aviv, originally born and raised in Israel, spent some time in the US, went to NYU, spent probably around 6 years in the US. So that's probably the first time I heard about fantasy sports, sports betting, American sport in general. So we spent a little time in the US, came back to Israel, worked for Google for a few years, almost 4 years, Google in Israel, mainly helping Israeli companies with all their online acquisition efforts, online funnels, online products across the seas. So again, big Israeli companies, they're trying to capture the opportunity around the world. And then back at, I think it was around 2017, decided to leave Google and go and pursue a new opportunity, which I knew very little about. So when we started sports betting, fantasy sports, and in general, the ability to help people make smarter decisions in a more easy, fun way around sports betting, fantasy sports, or anything related.
Take me 30,000 feet in the air. The world of sports betting. What is it really about? What's happening? What is the sports betting?
So it's a great question, and I think it's really it depends where you're located around the world. So sports betting in Israel, in Europe, in the US, it's very different. And I think that's why it's such a unique opportunity, because, sports betting was around for many years. I think since started at 40, 45 probably. And if you go to Europe, you'll see a very mature ecosystem with a lot of, operators that offer different kind of sports betting and a lot of other industry that just circling it with, with odds, with line, with product, with engagement, with the offline and online connection. So a very mature industry, but going to other places around the world, we started to see a big shift or a huge difference. So
but I have a question, or is this more of a cultural difference, or is this more of just the maturity of a market that is destined to mature everywhere, just not yet in specific areas?
So I think in general we see a sport consumption go up. Okay, so US is a great example. So the barrier is definitely not the consumption of sports. People love sports in the US, but still there wasn't any sports betting or anything similar until very recently. Going back to Europe, you understand that it's not about the sports, it's about the product, about the engagement, and obviously regulation. And where more and more states decided to change the view about sports betting, about fantasy sport, you say sports betting, but it's a much larger industry. We see an increasing adoption rates, and we see the shift from being something that is small, something that is borderline in the terms of the way the people view it. And we see more and more states and more countries around the world understanding that it's just like any other game and that's just entertainment. And again, it's really depends. When you look at sports betting, it's a spectrum. On the far right side, there are people that look at it as if it was stock trading. Okay, so they do it in a very, I would say, sophisticated, using stats, prediction, regression, a lot of tools that we know from online trading. But that's such a small percentage of the population. Most of us just love sports, want to watch it, and want to add some skin to the game. They want to earn their bragging rights of, telling their friends, "Look, I know better than you," or "This is my team." And obviously, it's part of a game. Think of it, and that's the way the U.S. regulator look at it. Buying a ticket to the, I don't know, to an experience, to a game. So you pay $10, you put it on your team, and suddenly the game become much more interesting.
Interesting. Digitalization of all of this, and entering 2022, what are the different opportunities that are presented as we transition to digital, and a lot of these physical experiences are now becoming more online experiences?
So I think it's a great question, and we can see a great example in the US market. So let me just give you like a brief history about sports betting, fantasy sports, and why we entered this domain. And I know very, very little about sports and sports betting in general, but we saw a huge opportunity here. So sports betting, it's part of sports for years. We saw states, countries, again, we can give Europe as an example, that was legalized and regulated for many years. And the market mature, similar to other products. If you look at the, dating industry or online delivery industry or whatever. So you saw that sports betting picked up like any other domain, any other apps. And we saw products getting mature with the market. And then we have the US market that was what we called not regulated. It's not that it wasn't legal, it wasn't regulated. So there wasn't any local supply or operators that launched product in the US market. So most of the people in the US just used products from Europe, and it was again very small percentage of the population. Somewhere around 2018, the US Supreme Court decided to regulate sports betting in the US. They understood that instead of having all the money go outside to foreign countries and foreign states, mainly Europe, they're going to regulate it in the US and have local operators open sportsbook mainly online. And then they can also, they can regulate it, and they can also enjoy of the revenues that coming from taxes and whatnot. So it's a unique situation when a market is open just due to regulatory change in a day. Okay, so something that was forbidden or illegal or unregulated, again, depends on specific territory, was opened in a day. Okay, so it created a lot of opportunities. And suddenly you needed to come with products that were not existed, because again, you saw other markets that got mature with the products, and they needed to now come and launch it in a new for new audiences in the States. So that created a huge gap between where the established big company were and what the user are today. So that gap offered us to come and offer better tools, better ways to exploit, better engagement, and I think most of all, a better way to look at the data, analyze it, and adopt it to millennials, to young people, to people that need to now begin their first steps in this world.
I love it. And so we're obviously talking a lot here about changing consumer behavior, and I think that's fascinating. What is Sidelines? What is this company that you're running, and how is it in line with the new shifts of consumer behavior that you were just talking about?
Okay, so let's go back to 2017 when we opened the company. I think it will be an interesting story, and it can also demonstrate how we look at the market, the opportunity, and what we actually offer today in the market. So I worked at Google, as I told you, 5 years ago. I decided that I'm going to pursue my next challenge, look for the smartest person in the floor, decided to take him with me, and look for opportunity. And when you work at Google and you know a lot about Google internal, external tools, there's a lot of data that you can analyze and try to understand trends, user behaviors, shifts in industries, and that's how we came across the fantasy sport world. You suddenly see that over the past 4 years, again 2014 all the way to 2017, huge amount of people in the US are looking for fantasy sports queries, related queries, and in general sports stats. And we didn't see it anywhere else in the world. So you ask yourself, why so many people looking for fantasy sports? What is it? And that's how we started. We looked at an opportunity, and we saw there's a huge gap between what people are looking for and searching for and what actually someone offer them. Okay, so we decided to dig deep and try to understand what is fantasy sport and what we can bring to this domain. And that's how we started. We saw that that's sports, and again, sports stats, sports betting, fantasy sports, regardless, it's a very complicated domain where you can go all the way from, trading tools, and on the right side of the spectrum, and all the way to just offer very simple way to compare. Okay, and we decided that we're going to take this complex domain and try to make it more simple and more approachable to the average fan. So our audience is just me and you and people that watch sports, never bet on sports. And they said, wow, this could be fun. Let's try to do it in a more simple, smart way. And if I need to give you an example, think of the shift that Expedia did. Okay, so what they did, they actually connected themselves to all the relevant airliners, collect all the information, brought them to one place, similar to other aggregator, and then started to play with the data and drive conclusion, build products, and now you can book a flight in a very easy way, the cheapest one or the fastest route or whatever, someone that sells kosher food or whatnot. So this is what we did for the online sport industry. We built a huge storage warehouse where we collect a lot of different data points. It can be lines from different operators, it can be weather, it can be trends, it can be injury feeds, whatnot. Again, tons of data that come to our system. We process it and we try to find trends, insight. And here it's what's different with Sidelines. Those insights or those key prediction or whatnot, we try to package it in a way that will address or will be relevant for the average Joe. It's people that never played with odds. And that's most of our audience. Just an average American that loves sports.
So if you're now thinking about this average person that is using Sidelines, where is really the aha moment? Because here before you were talking about this idea. Okay, so we're comparing to Expedia, and we're saying, okay, Expedia took as an aggregator took a lot of this information and allowed people to buy cheaper, quicker flights. But here, you're actually referring to a greater trend where there's a whole generation of people who are not yet exposed to fantasy sports and sports betting, etc. And now they're able to do it because of the simplicity of what you offer. So is the aha moment more so the fact that you're able to bring in new audiences that previously were not a part of this ecosystem? Or the fact that you're letting existing traders or existing bettors and people that are in this world already do it just in a much smarter way?
So in general, I think most American exposed to sports and sports stats, and they love sport. It's something that is cross genders, cross ages in the US. So it's not make it more, it's not expose them to the new domain. You just look at it from a different angle. So for us, sports betting, it's entertainment. Okay, that's how we see it. We're not addressing the people that want to do it as a professional, or people that do it to earn money. That's not the things that motivate our users. What we try, and you said aha moment. We have, I think, three aha moments, or three things that we identify as crucial to our products that are differentiate us from anyone else in this market, and build a huge barrier or moats, and also allow us to penetrate easily to the market. And the first one is obviously the experience. People sometimes call it UI and UX, but it's more so. It's building a product that will give you a different experience. It's not about the bet, okay, placing a bet and winning or losing. No, it's about the overall experience. So it's the connection to media. Okay, if I'm betting on something, there's a better chance that I want to watch it. And people don't watch games, they watch events, they watch highlights. So it's a different way to consume sports. Now, again, millennials and Gen Zs are more into heroes. I like players, I don't like teams. I don't know how old you are, but I had a team when I grew up. Most people today, they route for players. Like I love LeBron. I don't care which team he's playing, and I want to see only his highlights, and I care only about his stats. So this is the first aha moment to just make something different. It's not about placing a bet and see if I won or lose. It's about the way I consume media, consume my love to my heroes, or in general how I want to watch the game. So that's the first aha moment. The second one is that the entire engagement need to come with a very robust, smart CRM mechanism. Okay, think of the e-commerce. When you go and shop something, and then you get an email that says, "Listen, your cart is still it's not. You still have one item. Go, we change the price or whatever." There's so many things that brands are communicating constantly with you as a user or with an online buyer. So we try to do the same with sports betting, or with, again, the consumption of sports and sports stats. If you care about LeBron and you place a bet on what he's going to do tonight, we're going to be in constant communication with you until the game, during the game, and after the game. So we'll tell you, LeBron is going to have a killer night tonight because we saw that, I don't know, X, Y, and Z happen. And the game starts in 2 minutes. And here is the first 3 points that he just did, or whatever. So we're going to have a constant communication. And the third aha moment, and again, I know it's maybe complicated, but those three pillars really make us different than what any other product in the market today, is the social element. Again, people don't want to play them against the house. They don't want to gamble. It's not about the gambling. It's not about the betting. It's about the overall experience. I want that my friends will see that I almost won, or not even close to winning, whatever, a very complicated four-way, it means four different bets on specific events. And now I can share it, and people can also track it with me. And it's not about my $10 become, I don't know, whatever, 100. It's the overall process and discussion about it, and the bragging rights, and the fact that someone can come and say, "Listen, you know nothing about sport," and we can put it in the office. And again, this is something that is very cultural. The element of playing fantasy sports in the office and winning and not losing, and I think that those three pillars, the experience, the communication, and the social elements, is something that no other product in the market currently offer. And maybe I'll just make a very important or crucial point. We are not what people call the house. We are not the bookie. We are similar to Expedia. We are not the airline. So if we are not the house and you're not playing against us, we are on your side. Okay? We want you to win. We try to help our user, make smarter decision. So that's kind of a unique place to be in.
I think that's, I was just wondering about that because on one hand, you're, a tech startup talking about shifting consumer behaviors, talking about, these unique experiences, talking about data. But then, it's in the world of betting. And obviously, in the tech world, there are some people that may try to steer away from these things. Do you find any any feelings that as you go about, the day to day or the growth of the company, that there are some people that may not be interested in what you're doing, or may be a little bit taken back by simply the industry that you're in, or the fact that it has any connotation to do with gambling or betting?
Definitely, definitely. So, it's a two-sided sword. So a lot of people would
Yeah.
come and try to come and work with us, for us, alongside to us, because they love sports. It's a very interesting domain, and people love it. And, you'll come to our offices and you'll see NFL games all over, and we go watch games, and there is a huge sports environment around it. Okay, so this from one hand. On the other hand, obviously, sports betting, especially as an Israeli company here, it's something that is almost a taboo. I think that problem is mainly here in Israel, because in the US, this is such a culture. It's so embedded in their culture since college. So it's much easier to operate in the US, especially now with the huge change in regulation. So I don't see it different than any other game. Eventually, when you look at the amounts, you look at the measurements that the regulator, the states, and also the operators are doing to make sure that that's still a safe place and not addicted again. And it's really, it's a great question, because we also, ask ourselves a lot of times where we want to place ourselves. I think that, personally, I feel comfortable, and I think our investors, and especially now with the change in regulation, are much more, eager to go and hunt and go and pursue this opportunity. And obviously, in the US, it's much easier. It's never a problem when you talk to a US broadcaster employee, or someone that provides services. They get it immediately.
Oh, thank you very, very much for joining me. I learned a lot. This was very interesting,
Thank you so
and
much.
it's a world that I know little about, but I would love to know much, much more. And it sounds like Sidelines is
Yeah.
a really interesting company, and it sounds like you're so intentional about the way that you're approaching, your three big pillars of differentiation in what sounds like to be an emerging market where consumer behavior is rapidly shifting, and I'm excited to see where it takes Sidelines and where the world goes in general. So thank you very much for coming and sharing with me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and the question, and I hope more and more people will come and work with us, for us, and trying to capture the opportunity, because it's a huge, huge one that is just around the corner.